Hi, I'm Aura, and I'm the host of Collective Mind, and I might not stay front stuck anymore soon. I, for any of you who don't know, since becoming host, or at least, like, maybe there was some, at least since, like, finishing becoming host, there's some iffy stuff during that transition time, but since becoming host over a decade ago, I haven't had access to our inner world or like any visuals of it or much awareness in general. I've had some level awareness that varied a lot depending on the situation, but it involved like focusing a lot, and I would just like kind of know like where something was relative to something else, like that kind of thing. And there is kind of an exception to this, which I've talked about before in a video about the cabin. I will link that as one of the videos when we get to the end of this. But I seem to be gaining more access to our inner world. So I think this started kind of slowly months ago because I started having more visual dreams and more dreams overall, or at least remembering more of them, which wasn't common for me. I don't think visually, I can't picture things, and I don't have visual dreams. Typically, in my experience, things that I have thought were visual dreams were either things in our inner world, like I talked about in the video about the cabin, or like memories that I thought were dreams, or I like shared a dream with someone else and then I would usually lose that information, like about the visual components or all of it, in some cases, like pretty much immediately after. But I started having a lot more dreams and having them be visual or like almost visual, where I knew a lot of visual details about it, but couldn't remember for sure, like if it was visual while I experienced it or if I just knew a lot of visual things about it in some other way. And that had been happening for months. And I was wondering if something like that was happening because it wasn't normal for me. So I didn't know what was going on. But then more recently, a few weeks ago now, I think, as of filming this, I was in the middle of a conversation about system stuff, and the conversation involved thinking about how little I know about the altar I split from. As a reminder, or again for any of you who might not know, like to summarize the lore a little bit, I wasn't our host originally, and like right before becoming host, I split from the altar who at the time was our gatekeeper, and a lot of other altars split from her, including our gatekeepers now and some of my subsystem, and like it was a really significant split. But I know basically nothing about who that altar was before then. I don't know if like she had any relationships with anyone else in the system. Like, I don't know if people talked to her or knew who she was or what she did. I don't know if she had any level of trauma awareness or was able to do gatekeeper things without that, which is the case for a lot of our gatekeepers now. There's some general amount of trauma awareness, but it's the trauma things that like more of our system in general knows. So it's not because they're gatekeepers. Like, I know a lot of those things. It's because like executives know about those things and they don't have the memories of that trauma. They just are aware that it happened and they know like who holds it and things like that. But I like haven't heard any stories about who this alter was, like what she was like anything about her at all. And it was in a context of another conversation that I'm not going to get into, but I think it might have been something about that, like thinking about that altar I used to be a part of and realizing how little I know about her and how, like, even compared to other altars at the time, like I know more about other altars who existed at the same time than I do about her. Not everyone who did. Like, there are a lot of altars I know literally nothing about, but I was thinking about that. I was having a conversation about it. And in that conversation, like very suddenly had like very distinct awareness of who I call the guardian. I don't remember how much, if at all, I talked about him in the video about the cabin, but he is the only other person, I'm pretty sure, I have seen in there. And I don't think I've ever seen him leave there. I don't know if he is an altar or a fragment, or not even a fragment. Like, it's possible he wouldn't be able to front or anything, that he's more of an NPC or like almost like a function in a way. Like, I think there's a chance that he works similarly to like our magic objects and stuff in our inner world that aren't altars, but like have effects on altars, if that makes sense. And it still wasn't visual. It hasn't been visual at any point yet. And I'm trying not to jump around too much and to make it like cohesive in a way that makes sense. But it's also, I think it's distracting to talk about it because it pulls my attention more inside. But I'm gonna try to keep going. So it wasn't visual, but it was very specific awareness and in a lot of detail, and way more than ever before outside of the dreams that weren't dreams that I talked about in the cabin video. And like I knew where I was in the room, I knew where the guardian was, I knew what he was doing, I knew which direction I was facing. I like details that are a lot more specific than I usually have, even if I'm paying really close attention and not like being cut off or anything from what I'm trying to look at. Like it, in a way, it feels like it's as specific and detailed as if I was looking at it, but I couldn't see it. And then the guardian started going through boxes in the cabin and unboxed some specific magic objects and attached them to magic accessories that I already had. One is a circlet, like on my head, and then there's a ring and a staff. I don't know how much detail I'm going to get into those objects specifically necessarily, because that almost should be like a whole thing by itself the more I think about it, and could involve getting into more specifics of like some things about our inner world, like the main area in general. But it was essentially, it felt like a kind of ceremonial thing of attaching magic items that had been in the cabin and one that had been somewhere else that a different altar brought. Attaching them, or wait, I might be wrong about that. Now I don't remember. Either two or all three of the magic items that were like attached to my existing accessories were already in the cabin. Now I'm second guessing my memory about the third one, but I think it must have already been in there because I couldn't leave until I had all three. But it like I was talking to friends while this happened. Like this was a real time. I was saying like I'm suddenly really aware of the guardian. He's opening boxes. He just took this out of one of the boxes and put it on my ring. Like, it was that kind of a thing. And I specifically remember after two of the three objects, I tried to open the door to, like the front door of the cabin to walk out, and I couldn't. So but after the third one, I tried again and I could. And I usually don't have much awareness of myself in a world at all, and almost never have awareness of myself in a world in the cabin, which this gets into some complicated where I was in three places in our inner world at the same time, and one of those was the cabin, one was the car, which is where we are to front, and the other one was somewhere else very far away in our inner world. And that, like, piece of me was like doing things, like had a job. And it's another one of those things that doesn't make sense because I ended up being able to like merge basically with these other, like the versions of me who were in these other places. I could walk from the cabin to the car, and when I went over there, it like once I was close enough, there wasn't two of me anymore. And then a different altar brought the one who was far away to me, and the same thing happened. I don't think I consider it to be a fusion. I don't have any new memories from it. I think, unless I haven't unlocked new memories yet or something, but like I definitely thought of myself, at least, to have been both the person in the cabin and the person in the car. So I don't really know how to describe it. The closest thing I can compare it to is I know Naya can physically in our inner world be in multiple places at once. She can only really have her active attention in one, maybe two places at a time, but she can kind of run on autopilot in the meantime, so it's helpful for her role as a caretaker because she can be, like, if she's comforting a little and it's like something that she doesn't need to focus on, like if she's just like rocking them to sleep or something, like something that's not something you have to like actively think about, that something you could do on autopilot, she can also be physically somewhere else doing something else. So I think that's my best comparison to it. But she definitely remembers what she has been doing in all of those other places. And I, again, didn't gain any new memories, including from the piece of me or whatever that was far away, that I thought of as more separate from me because I had never, at least I don't think I had. I want to be careful saying things like in confident absolute terms because of how bad my memory is, but I don't think I had ever thought of myself like in our inner world from the perspective of being there and doing those things. And I still don't have memories, again, of like the job she was doing that whole time she was there. I know some things about it, but I don't have any memories of it. I have memories of like learning about it, but I thought that that was like a fragment who split from me. I definitely thought of that piece as being significantly more separate. Whereas I thought of like the cabin and the car, like that I was actually physically in the cabin and there was like a projection kind of me in the car, or some equivalent to that, I think was how I thought about it. I feel like this is complicated, but I'm trying to talk through the experience, even though it like feels complicated to me, and hopefully it makes at least enough sense to be able to like ask questions if parts of it are confusing. I think that's the best I'm going to be able to do, but I'm going to try to keep rambling through this and hope that it makes sense. So, okay. So, like, in terms of the... You know what? Hold on. I can do this more effectively. I got a whiteboard. I'm going to try to sketch this out a little bit. I mean sketch in the loosest possible sense. I'm going to, like, write cabin and car and stuff. Okay. So if I'm thinking about the cabin as like here. Okay. So yeah, you can kind of see this. So if this is the cabin, this is what I call like the front door of the cabin, and the back door behind it is a cliff with the sea behind it. That's what I've sketched so far. And then out in front of the cabin is the car. And then on this here. No, there we go. Car. And then this is a bunch of trees. It's like a whole forest area. So I walked out of the cabin, out of the front of the cabin, to the car, merged with the like piece of myself that was in the car, and then a different altar like came from way over here and brought the third piece of me. And like I have now merged with all known pieces of me at this point in the story. Okay. So at that point, I start testing like if I could leave the car still, and I could, and I could like walk around nearby. I didn't go very far. I was really nervous. I could also go slightly into my subsystem's inner world, which I am not going to try to sketch out in any way. I don't think I'm gonna describe it. The part that I saw is really pretty. I'll give you that much. Even though, which that's a great example of something that it feels like that's information I should have acquired visually, but I didn't. I couldn't see it. I just like knew it was pretty. As though I was seeing it and then couldn't remember seeing it, or as though it was like really familiar and I had a sense of like remembering that it was really pretty or something. I don't know. But like I tried all of those things. Nothing visual, like I keep saying, but also nothing tactile. I couldn't like feel touching anything. And that's another one that's hard to describe because there are things at different points in this story where I know what it felt like, but I wasn't feeling it. It's the same thing where it's almost like a tip of my tongue type thing. It's like I can tell it's right there, but I can't quite see it or I can't quite feel it. But I know what it looks like and I know what it feels like, but I have to kind of focus more on that to know it. Like I'll get like an initial emotional impression, but then I have to like really think about it and pay closer attention and be like, okay, like this water is really blue, but it has like a more silvery white like foam on the waves, like details like that. I learned I could fly during this time. I don't have wings. I apparently can just like fly in like the hovering way without needing any wings or anything special like that. And then I also there's another place that is so I've reached the limits of the whiteboard because I can't really indicate dimensions on a whiteboard. But in a different dimension than the car and like that whole area, but kind of like it's right above the car, but it's not. But like for people who can go there, like I think that's the only way I've gone there. There's a place that I knew of that had another really important like magic item from our inner world that was really close by, and so it didn't feel too scary to like test. I wonder if I can go here. And I could. And so that was another thing. And this was all on that, like, first day. This all happened in a period of, like, a few hours at most. And then I was getting really overwhelmed. And, like, Oliver kept telling me that I, like, won't be able to do more unless I'm ready, and that he'll go with me if and when that happens, and that, like, just trying to calm me down, basically. But I then had, on a different day, I want to say like a couple weeks later, like a week or two later, it was a little bit later, I decided to test the theory of, what if I just go further away from the front? Like, maybe there will be a point where my, like, awareness suddenly goes completely inside and not still, like, having mostly front awareness and some inner world awareness, because that is the other thing. I was fronting or still, like, co-fronting or co-conscious during all of this whole time. My way I decided to test that, to test it fairly quickly and in a way where I hopefully wouldn't chicken out, I decided to get out of the car and, like, go past the cabin and just, like, jump off of that cliff into the sea. And it was the same type of thing. I stayed fronting, still no visuals, still no, like, touch of inside. But, like, the thing I said of where it was, like, on the tip of my tongue, and I could describe what the water looked like, and I knew that the water was, like, the perfect, comfortable temperature, and I could tell when other alters came and started, like, swimming with me, and it was a whole thing. I swam pretty far out to, like, more thoroughly test the theory, and when I got pretty far out, I noticed that the sun started to rise briefly in our inner world before going back down, which, to my knowledge, has never happened before. Our inner world, in the main area, subsystems work differently, but in the main area, it's always dark, and you can see stars in the sky, but no sun, no moon. So I was, like, theorizing about that, and then on a different day decided to test one of my theories, and I went to a specific place that I know is way out there, which is where that third piece of me was. And I basically interacted, like, one of the magic items that I had just been given in order to leave the cabin, I used that to interact with a magic item that was already in this other location, and then the sun rose. And as far as I know, like, the sun works more normally in our inner world now in general. And then I came back, and then I remembered that the other, like, similar magic item that I had already visited by instinct on that first day was right above the car, and I wonder what happens if I interact with that. And then the moon rose, and so now we have a sun and a moon in our inner world. And that's basically where the story wraps up so far. But it makes me wonder if there are basically other, like, quests, pretty much, that I have to do in our inner world to, like, finish unlocking my ability to go inside. Because, again, I was very far away physically from the front in our inner world, and I was fronting that whole time. So I have not lost front awareness at any point yet doing any of this, or just like randomly, as far as I know. And I haven't gained like higher than this awareness, but I'm like clearly having an effect on our inner world when I'm doing these things. So I'm wondering if I have to interact with other like important like magical objects in our inner world, and if it will like unlock stuff that will give me access. And that would be interesting. It'd be interesting if the gatekeeper I used to be set that up intentionally to be like what I would need to do to gain access to our inner world. I don't know really what the reasoning would be behind that, or if someone else did it since then, or if it's something our brain did automatically, or what. But those things that I have done so far have definitely affected things in our inner world, but not changed how much like access and awareness I have. There are other places I could theoretically try to go that I haven't tried to go yet, because they are more intimidating. I don't have any reason to expect to be unable to go to those places. I just think it will be less comfortable to go to those places, and I'm nervous about it. But if I am going to treat it like it's a bunch of quests, I am definitely going to have to go to some, if not all, of those places that I'm scared of. So yeah, but it seems to have something to do potentially with returning like stolen or otherwise stored magic in our inner world to like its rightful source type thing. In a lot of ways it feels silly that I would need to jump through a bunch of hoops to gain more access. And I could be wrong about that. But what I have done so far does seem to be doing something, and even if it doesn't affect my access, it might affect other things in ways that are like good for our system. So, and maybe it's a way for me to like kind of work up to it more in a way that would be less overwhelming. Because maybe being more aware, like being more fully present in our inner world, would be a lot more overwhelming, and maybe having some of these experiences first, especially in the places that I'm more nervous about, that might help me like feel more comfortable, and that might be the thing stopping me from having more access or awareness than I do. I have talked some before about why I wish I could go inside. I made a video about that. I'll link that at the end of this too, but there are also things about it that are nerve-wracking. So yeah, that that's where it is right now, and I plan to update if it changes, basically, but that is the rambly, convoluted story of how I gained a little bit more access and awareness and stuff. And how I seem to be able to just, like, go around our inner world doing things while still fronting the whole time. So, yeah. I hope that wasn't too, like, convoluted and confusing. Alright. If you do have questions for us, feel free to put them in comments or come hang out on Discord, or patrons have places that they can comment stuff on Patreon too. I have been making pretty good progress on editing the more recent outtakes compilations, the ones that are quite a bit faster that I talked about in a recent video updating, like, about the plan for stuff. I am getting pretty close to caught up, actually, to present day for those, and then I'll go back and keep chipping away at the older ones that take longer. But I'm also working on subscriber compilations for if we reach the next, like, mini goal on the way to 1,000. So yeah, I'm trying to do stuff behind the scenes when I feel up to it, even if it's not like filming or streaming, if I'm not up for those things, to try to work on things like subtitles for videos and editing things when I can and planning for stuff and all that. So we're troubleshooting more physical health stuff, and I expect some ups and downs on how we're doing throughout that, but we're trying to still do this stuff when we can, because we like it and it's important to us, and we hope you like it too. And if you do, please click the like button so that YouTube knows that you like it, and make sure that you subscribe and ring the bell for notifications and everything, and then you have a better chance of seeing when we do manage to get videos and streams up. And yeah, everything else below me is linked in the description and things as well, and go check them out if you want, and we will be back with more stuff when we can. So thanks for watching. Bye!